facing or will be facing. Uh, I think in terms of the potential and in terms of the energy transition that we need to do, Pakistan will be one of the countries which has probably the most potential in terms of the changes that we will see going forward. And I'll share with you why we have that potential. In terms of energy per capita, Pakistan is one of the lowest countries in the world. We have only 40,000 megawatts of generation capacity. In terms of gas, we are energy deficient. We have massive load shedding in certain areas in the country in terms of gas as well as power. We have around 20% of the people in the country, as per World Bank, who do not have access to electricity. We still people burn wood and biomass. So there is in the country which is either off-grid, weak-grid, which is facing gas load management. In terms of the presence of industry in the overall energy industry is the lowest component compared to domestic. So keeping these facts in mind, where do we go from here? We can only go north as far as energy consumption is concerned. And where will that excess or additional energy come from? Most of it has to be renewable. And the reason is, in today's world, the cost of generating energy through renewable sources has come down significantly compared to the fossil fuel base. So Pakistan, I think in the next few years, will see massive transformation in terms of its energy mix, in terms of solar, wind. We're talking about projects of green hydrogen, which will help sustain our fertilizer sector. And the upstream, we were discussing before this, our upstream companies, and they will be talking a lot more about it, they will have to go through massive energy transition in terms of how they structure themselves and their divisions. So what we are seeing over the next few years, the coordination between our Ministry of Energy and Ministry of Climate Change and our Energy Conservation Department, which is MICA, our Alternate Energy Board, they all have to come together. And we are working on a few projects in terms of changing the energy inefficient appliances in the country, in terms of how we run our tube wells, which we run on diesel. So overall, if you want to reduce our import bill, if you want to be climate friendly, the way to go will be to focus on energy, climate friendly green energy and the coordination between the Ministry of Climate Change and the Ministry of Energy. So that's one thing. I think the constraint that we are facing, some of the constraints which are in our hands are the way people are stealing electricity, people are not paying bills, the way our existing energy mix is structured. Now those are the aspects that we are looking at. One aspect in which we will need to market ourselves and we will need support from the global community is on the financing side. Our credit today is not one of the best in the world, and it is improving. Recently we have seen a lot of improvement in terms of our economic numbers. And I think going forward, if we are able to attract the right financiers from the world and have the right structures, I think Pakistan offers tremendous potential to the world in terms of investment as well as returns in the green space. That's it from my side. Over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. So I will start the session. So here you are seeing the most august panel of the people sitting here running the oil and gas industry of Pakistan, providing you the energy. So let me start this with Mr. Ahmed. Sir, how do you see and how do you define a broader roadmap in terms of OGDCL transitioning into an integrated energy company? So if you would like to take a
Thank you. OGDCL, the largest E&P company of Pakistan, the largest contributor to in terms of taxes, and also the larger contributor for CSR amongst the private sector. Its core businesses is fossil fuel, hydrocarbons, and we expect that for the considerable period of time, the demand for hydrocarbons will stay. The company has a going concern, as a commercial concern, has focus on its core business. But at the same time, it has to be cognizant of its responsibilities, obligations, in terms of its carbon footprint, in terms of reducing the impact of its business on the climate. And going forward, the green and new energy landscape, it has become relevant, and it has become part of Indonesia's corporate strategy as well. So we have embarked on this journey, though at a very nascent rudimentary stage, but the transition to new energy landscape, that process has been initiated. The board of directors has approved the roadmap, and we intend to proceed in this direction, which includes exploring opportunities in the entire new energy landscape, which includes green hydrogen, which includes geothermal, and other renewables, including solar and wind. So we have sort of embarked on this journey, and as we move on, the portion of renewables that we expect will be a considerable portion in terms of our revenues and the companies.
So then that leads me to Mr. Abbasi, in terms of you're also running one of the largest MOCs. So how you are basically looking after the greenhouse gas emissions, and what are some specific measures that you are taking in terms of PPL reducing its footprint, carbon footprint?
Thank you. Before I start, I just want to put a few things in perspective. PPL has been in the business for a very long time, even though we're not as large as OGDC, but we've been around a lot long. We're operating the Sui field, which was discovered back in the 1950s, and since then we've got a footprint across the country. By and large, E&P companies, and I want to put this, I'm going to take it back and not directly address your question, I'll take it back a little bit. We're not the largest polluters in the world. Many years ago, E&P companies started on this journey of reducing the carbon emission in greenhouse gas. So we've been doing that. Even before the COP21 kicked in 2015 and 16. So oil and gas business has been doing this. In the early 2000s, the flaring was reduced because generally all oil and gas fields they got flares. It's an operational requirement, so you have to have some flares. I will not say that we have eliminated flaring altogether because it's not physically possible. I don't know of an operational method where we will eliminate pilots completely. So we do a little bit of flaring, but it's very minimal, and that's because of safety and operational reasons. So we are on that journey already, and we started doing this way before the world made commitments at COP21 in Paris. Now let's go back to COP21. In COP21, the world realized that, I think that was the first sort of formal agreement which was signed. They are known as the Paris Accords. And the world pledged that we will bring our, we limit our temperature growth to about 2 degrees Celsius. Now the consensus is that 2 is actually too aggressive. We need to be really 1.5. Now, if we sit back now and look at where we stand right now, globally, we are struggling even to maintain 2. So we know we're close. So something has to happen. Something has to happen and happen very quickly. And we all have to take that responsibility. PPL, coming back to your question, I'm sorry I digressed a little bit, but coming back to your question on PPL. PPL, we have been following good practices for a number of years. Recently, we have started a portal where we have now started reporting our greenhouse gases, which was not done in the past. That's part of the global reporting initiative, I believe it's called. Now, the GRI is not new. It is really a sort of a follower from the ISO 26000, which started years and years ago. So, GRI is more specific towards global greenhouse gases, which is GHG. So we have been doing that. Now, the portal that we have started within PPL, there are baby steps. I'll grant you that. We are, I'm not going to brag that we are very far ahead, but we have started a portal and we are reporting our greenhouse gases now. For people who understand the reporting standards, they are split into 3 parts. We have implemented part 1 and part 2. Part 3 we haven't implemented, and there's a reason for that. And the reason we haven't implemented is because, to be very honest, they are very hard and very stringent. And we're still trying to understand how to maneuver it and how to, put in the required instrumentation so we can actually report. So that's going to be a challenge. For me as a CEO of the company, my challenge is to implement the third phase of that reporting standard. So that's the first part. Now coming back to what we are doing in SUI, as I mentioned, SUI was discovered in the 50s. It's a very old asset. Most of the facilities are old and aging, and they do require a lot of maintenance. Of course, there are a lot of challenges where we have to, when you operate that particular asset. So we have been managing it. We are prudently reducing our gas burn because we use our own gas to generate electricity to run our facilities. We have been trying to do that. One of the initiatives which I'll dwell upon a little bit has to do with trying to reduce the gas burn. But in order to do that, we have realized that our return on equity is actually quite poor. The only way that's going to work is if we can somehow morph it into some sort of a carbon credit kind of a scenario. That's when it will start making economic sense for us. It's a challenge. Carbon credits in Pakistan certainly is not an exact science. It's not a mature industry, but that's something which we are pursuing. We have engaged some consultants, and we believe that it could follow. That will be a pioneering effort if we manage it quite well. Because that will probably be the first venture where we will, offset against carbon credits. So that's one side we are doing. What we are doing in SUI right now, in terms of being environmentally friendly, we have a zero discharge policy. Our flaring is to a minimum. I think the numbers, but I won't because I think I've taken enough time. We are even using the reject from the reverse osmosis plant for plantation. I mean, as some of you would know that the water that comes out of a reverse osmosis plant is usually very brackish. It's not used for anything, but we can treat it and we can use it, and we are doing that. We operate a hospital in SUI, and we've got hazardous waste over there, biohazard waste. We have installed proper incinerators, and we brought our waste down by 50% over there. That's something we are doing. We are quoting a number right now that we have reduced our CO2 discharge, or we will be reducing our CO2 discharge at SUI by about 15,000 tons per year after we have implemented some of the policies that we have followed. Other than that, I think that's all I have to say on SUI. I think I'll do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a lot of good information coming out. So just want to build from it some of the steps that you also mentioned. So I would like Mr. Fahim to elaborate on how you're reducing your carbon footprint in your operations, and what are the most sustainable practices that you are developing or you have developed. So if you can please talk about the Marty's perspective on that, please.
Thank you. So Marty Petroleum is, we're lucky in one aspect that majority of our production is gas. So we are already having less emissions of light. Second thing about Marty is that we produce, majority of our gas that we produce is used for making fertilizer, and that contributes a lot to the energy security and the food security of the country. In terms of sustainability, first on our operations, we are committed to reduce our environmental footprint as much as we can, and we have taken some steps in this regard already. We have, for example, our flaring is very, very minimal. For our combustion and power generation operations, we are trying to use the gas which is available at the fields, and we have implemented use of catalytic converters wherever possible to minimize our footprint. And at the same time, we have taken a lot of other steps on the social development side. For example, we have built a plastic road directly using 4 tons of plastic, which was generated in our camp. That road is currently being used by the general public. You also mentioned about the RO plants. We have put more than 200 RO plants in the district hierarchy. We're also working on black and grey water segregation. We're also spending money on social development and education of the local communities. So basically covering all the three elements of ESG, we are spending a lot of money. Even on governance side, we are training our people, we are spending a lot of money on their development and making sure that we are not left behind in this journey and doing our part as a responsible company to meet the sustainable development goals which our country has signed as part of the Paris Agreement.
So thank you very much. Some very formidable steps that you mentioned, talking about the plastic roads, and zero flooding and what ESG. A lot of good stuff coming out. Before I move to on the downstream and ask you a question, let me have a bit of a controversial question. Let me put Mr. Masood Nabi on the spot without his permission on this. And so the question is that, okay, are we the biggest offender, as we people think, in terms of polluting the environment?
Thank you, Amir Saab. Good question, but it does not have an easy answer. If you look at the numbers, it's very important to look at numbers. The upstream industry contributes, let's say, I think, according to studies, less than 9% of total greenhouse emissions. 9%. But the products that we produce contribute another 33% of now, if we look at the targets that we have to achieve by, let's say, not 2030, by 2050, it requires that we curtail emissions by not thousands of tons, but by billions of tons. So there is no room for business as usual in the coming years and decades for our companies. And again, I won't comment on good or bad, but I would certainly say that it's good to see that our leading companies such as OGDC, EPL, and MARI, they have developed roadmaps with specific targets on initiatives that they are working on. And I was reading OGDC's roadmap, and they have very, very specific targets on what they are to achieve. We need a bit of better data, but I think they're moving in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Masood. So we also welcome you in terms of the downstream industry. So, I think one of the questions that we are all interested to know, that how you are going to produce more sustainable fuels. So if you can please take this on.
So first of all, as it was discussed, 9% carbon emissions are attributed to production in the upstream sector, and I think 2 to 3% are attributed to the refineries. But the actual carbon footprint comes, as we know that on average, for MOGAS, we produce approximately 2.5 kilograms of fuel. So that is a big figure. So our company, you see, we started as a pipeline company back in 1981. So I was just calculating that even today 70% of the country's energy demand are being met by import. And 10 million tons per annum of MOGAS and 8 million tons per annum of diesel is demanded in the country. And out of these 18 million, 70% is being imported. And we are transporting all these fuel by trucks to our country, approximately 1,500 kilometers to 2,000 kilometers. So if we only put all these material in pipeline, we can save approximately $50 to $90 million per year in terms of fuel cost. And that will obviously drastically reduce our carbon footprint. So I think this is an important factor. So moving forward, we have to look at how we can transport the fuel, because we should not generate too much CO2 until the fuel reaches to the end consumer. So that is number one. And obviously we have a biggest refinery in Pakistan, biggest operating refinery. So we are also implementing initiatives like flare gas recovery and other operational accidents we are incorporating within our operations. So that is in progress. So we are also working on two new initiatives. One is to produce biodiesel, sustainable fuels. So to produce the biodiesel, there are different methods. So we are focusing on collecting the used cooking oil. As you know that in Pakistan there is no awareness that cooking oil can be used only once or twice. And people keep it using it again and again until it is hazardous for health. So we can collect the UCO and we can convert that UCO into biodiesel. And then we can convert, so we have done a study in which we have seen that 300 to 400,000 tons per annum we collect the UCO and we can convert into biodiesel. So that is one aspect on which we are doing study. The second thing is post-consumer plastic. So plastics are also made from, from naphtha. Origin of the plastic starts from naphtha. So if we can, collect the plastic and recycle that plastic again to make the virgin quality plastic, so that will also reduce the carbon footprint. So the latest technologies in the oil and gas industry are focusing that how we can do the same work by utilizing minimum crude oil. These are the two initiatives Parco is working at the moment.
So yeah, thank you very much. Very informative point. So, Mr. Ahmed, moving towards you, back to you. I mean, since you took charge of the office, I think some of the things that you have been working on very aggressively, it includes some of these diversification efforts, and in terms of number of MOUs have been signed, and there is a geothermal initiative going on. So there are a number of initiatives in OGDCL that we have seen. So if you can please elaborate on those efforts in terms of renewable, and particularly talk about the initiative that you have taken in terms of exploring the geothermal.
I think one bit of information which is extremely relevant for today's event and as far as COP28 is concerned is that all the 4 E&P companies, they have signed the decarbonization charter, and we are amongst those 50 companies globally which have endorsed the decarbonization charter and which stand committed to the decarbonization initiative going forward. So I think this is a credit for Pakistan and establishes and demonstrates that E&P sector of Pakistan is committed towards all causes which are there for the planet. Now coming to your question, OGDCL, I think the first initiative was the MOU between OGDCL, PPL, Mali Petroleum, Chemical Holding. That was regarding exploring opportunity and feasibility of green hydrogen in Pakistan. And PPL is taking lead on that, and I'm sure during the course of our conversation today, PPL will shed some light on the hydrogen initiative. Exclusively for OGDCL, we also initiated the initial pre-feasibility for geothermal potential. We had certain wells in Sindh, and we wanted to understand the potential of geothermal. So the initial study has been completed. Now we have entered the feasibility stage, and I'm quite hopeful that the first pilot project on geothermal will be initiated by OGDCL. Beyond that, there are a number of MOUs which were entered into. For instance, one of the most important one is with, in fact, with the National Disaster Risk Management Fund. where we will be collaborating in due course of time. In fact, we started working on it in terms of developing our sustainability policy framework, augmenting it, and also evaluating opportunities in the green energy landscape, and as well as carbon credit, how it can be used by OGDCL for its business operations. Besides this, it is academia into this. So we will see pursued with our major universities in Pakistan on our green initiatives and sustainability, and especially from an R&D perspective, because that is one area which typically remains sort of out of focus. And so I think it was important for companies like OGDCL that we come forward and there's a bit of a hand-holding for R&D. So we are in advance. In fact, as I go back, I'll be signing the MOU with Ghulam Mustafa Institute purely on a prototype, or developing a prototype and ultimately using it at industrial scale for green hydrogen, which will be, we expect that through electrolysis hydrogen will be produced and the process will be powered through renewable energy. Besides that, we are also working very closely with NUST and LUMS. So this is how we intend moving forward. And besides this, there is a process of solarization where we are working with various non-governmental organizations for in areas where we operate, we have our operations, and typically those areas are remote areas. And so there is a plantation drive and there is a solarization, and so these are how we intend moving forward.
Yes, sir, thank you very much. A number of high-level initiatives that you've explained very well. So, for example, a question for you in terms of the hydrogen, because that's an area that I understand Marty Petroleum is working. So, that's, if you can please a little bit put your, comments on it, and how you are planning to set up the hydrogen production facility, right? And how you going to work in that area.
Thank you, Amit. So in terms of, energies for future, I think we all are aware that hydrogen is one of the key areas where West is very much focused, even China is very much focused, and there's a lot of investment which is ongoing into the production of hydrogen and making it as a fuel for future. So we are also doing our homework on the early stages of this journey. Obviously, the cost of production still remains very, very high. At the moment, it's not commercially viable, but we are working with some of our partners to develop some conceptual pilot projects, which we are going to be trying to implement if we get the funding and if we can get the feasibility done. For example, one project we are looking at is to use hydrogen for ammonia production, for making fertilizers. That is one area where we are working. And secondly, we are also supporting the ministry to develop a hydrogen policy and the standards and the governance framework which is needed to implement this technology going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I start moving towards the more on the concluding remarks, Masood Saab, I would like to get your opinion and your answer on how do we ensure transparency in terms of the processes that we run, and what are your comments in terms of reporting? How do we ensure the transparency in terms of oil and gas reporting?
Thank you, Mr. GHPL is a partner in over 150 licenses and leases in Pakistan. We are practically in every concession. One issue which I touched on earlier is there is a lack of reliable and consistent data across the companies. And you know, we are having this discussion today. Last year, we didn't have this discussion. We're moving the right direction, but a lot more work needs to be done in terms of having companies report their emissions and what their plans are, so we can see where we can get most value for our money. And there could be initiatives that are easier to achieve, those should be prioritized. So the first step is consistent and reliable data across companies. In many parts of the world, such disclosures have been driven by investors. We really haven't had that push, so we have to make the effort ourselves to start reporting on a voluntary basis.
So yeah, that's very interesting. You know, in terms of the reporting, and in my concluding questions, I would like to hear a bit more from the panelists in terms of ESG reporting. So, sir, your closing comments as well, and also some comments from you in terms of what sort of a fiscal regime we need to have while we are moving towards these initiatives and environmental initiatives. So, these are thoughts on the fiscal regime that should be there, and along with your concluding comments on this.
Thank you. I'll just digress a little bit again, as normal. A comment on hydrogen. We are in collaboration with all most of the players on the stage on a hydrogen project. We have started a feasibility. So the hydrogen project we are looking at is actually in 3 steps. There's what we call the upstream, the power is generated, and there's a midstream where through electrolysis we are generating hydrogen. And then there's the downstream side of it, which will be how you transport the hydrogen to the grid and ship it overseas. So the business model is really hydrogen export. The feasibility work has been completed. We have started getting some numbers, as Fahim Saab very rightly pointed out. At the moment, these projects are capital intensive, I'll be honest with you. We are not talking hundreds of millions of dollars, we're talking billions of dollars, and 3 to 4 years to gestation. So they are challenging, but it's not, I think technology will evolve, costs are going to come down, and it is our duty to keep pursuing these projects, which we intend to do so. So, and that's just a comment on the hydrogen side. As far as fiscal is concerned, I'll reflect on some of my experiences in the past. I think it's important so you get perspective of how this works. In 2009, I was involved, not in Pakistan but elsewhere, I was involved in a carbon sequestration project. So one of the first things I was given as a project manager was to go through the various stage gates for a enhanced oil recovery and CO2 injection project. Now, the field I was working on was making 30-40% CO2 in the gas that we were producing. We were stripping out those 40% CO2 molecules, and we were venting that in the air. So back in 2009, this particular country realized that this was not good. Even this was pre-COP 21s and all the countries that the world made. So we looked at it very seriously. I worked on that project for a year, and I want to just share some thoughts with you. We worked it, and the way we were going to make it work financially, because being a commercial entity, it has to make sense financially. So we said, okay, fine, we're going to strip out the CO2, put in the money, compress CO2, what do you do with it? There's no market for this CO2. Ultimately, I'm hoping there will be a market for CO2. So the CO2 that the idea was we were going to inject that for enhanced oil recovery. So without going into reservoir engineering basics, if you inject CO2 or gas or certain materials, you actually improve the recovery of oil from aging fields. So that was the concept in layman's term. So we had a depleting field, we had a lot of CO2, we said we're going to put that in the ground, and that will give us an incremental oil. And we will see if that incremental oil will pay for the project. So that was the business model. So we started working on it. I spent a year and a half on it. And sadly, the project did not go through. It went to the board and it was shot down. Of course, very disappointed. And the reason for that was the cost. There were no fiscal incentives or carbon credits or anything that we are now talking about. In 2009, these things didn't exist. Now they do. And I just want to share this with you. I found out about a week ago, because that's my old company. I still have friends over there. That project FID. Now, if that FID, that particular company would only FID it if it made business sense. So it made business sense because that particular country then has introduced carbon credits and has given fiscal incentives. And that project in 2009 which didn't work, in 2023 it works. And the project is now being executed. So I don't really have, I'm not a fiscal guru. I leave that to the government and the financial visits. I'm sure there are a lot more astute people in this audience who can recommend. But in order for these green initiatives to work, we talk about carbon credit, let's leave that aside, that's a little bit more complicated. But what can the government do right now? I think that's what, the Honorable Minister is here and we talk about incentives. I don't have an answer, but something has to be given for these projects to go forward. Whether it's in terms of royalty holidays or tax breaks or import of equipment or whatever. So, in my view, fiscal terms are a catalyst for these projects to go forward. Because right now, as Saeem Saab said, and I also know that the green hydrogen projects are not economic. Most of our carbon sequestering projects in Pakistan, I can tell you, I have a look at the economics, they will not be economic. We can keep strategizing and coming up with plans of putting CO2 in the ground, but I will be surprised if they are economic. We would need some sort of an assistance through the government, and more importantly, I think, is also the financing side. We are not really flush with cash. But I understand there are projects or there are funds which will actually put money in green projects. So that's an area, that's an avenue we as a consortium of company and we as the government should pursue. We should try to bring in these green funds to fund some of these climate-friendly projects. I think I've answered your question, right?
Vice Sir, thank you very much. Very candid and straight comments. I think certainly there is an avenue available for us to collaborate more with the concerned ministry on this. So as I conclude, this your views on the some of the measures that you are taking in terms of refineries day-to-day operation to improve, and if you would like just to share your takeaway, because first time you are attending the COP event as well, and in fact I would like other panelists to give their point of view in terms of the one takeaway from this event. That would be your concluding comment.
Thank you, Mr. So just a comment on green hydrogen. So you know that nowadays all the refineries are working on upgrade projects. So for Parco, the bottom of the barrel upgrade project, its capital cost is around $1.5 billion. And when we look at that, if we provide green hydrogen for the upgrade, the requirement is around 180 tons per day. So to provide that 180 tons per day of hydrogen, we will require approximately 400 megawatts of green electricity to produce that hydrogen. It means another $1 billion will be required, you see, to set up that hydrogen plant. And in contrast to that, if we go the traditional way, the same job can be done in $100 million. So the gap is too large. And presently, as Amritsar has rightly mentioned, that it is not possible economically to go for the green hydrogen. But obviously, I think the good thing is this, that our different companies have started to work on this. We can set up our pilot plant initially. We can learn the technology, and we are ready that then it is economically viable, then we can go for that. And I think for Pakistan, the biggest area to go is in the renewable energy, which is wind and power. So we have to invest a lot in that area, and that will give us, you see, not only carbon neutrality, but also will give us credits, and we can also sell that green hydrogen. We can also export the green hydrogen. I think that is the way forward, because we have done a study. So in that study, I just can share the numbers with you. So by 2050, we will be requiring one big refinery, approximately 400,000 barrels per day. We will be requiring 15 gigawatts of coal. We will be requiring 30 gigawatts of solar energy and will be requiring 25 gigawatts of wind energy. So that is the requirement and potential which we can harness by 2050. So I think in all our future projects and initiatives, we have to take in mind that how we can what the world has done now, we can implement that into our projects.
So it's some quite staggering numbers that you are talking about. So just on the before I move to Mr. Ahmed and Mr. Fahim, so your takeaway from the event as you go back and one of your takeaways from this event and the concluding remark from the event.
One major takeaway is that we should do a lot of work, we need to do a lot of work before the next COP, before COP29. And rather than just, preparing for the event right before it, it should be something we are doing every day, focusing on initiatives, keeping a track of them, and it should just become part of our usual business operations. So it shouldn't be anything special, it should just be something we are doing in the normal course of business, and looking forward to continuing our efforts in this.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you very much, Mr. Saab. So, Fahim Saab, one of the areas that Mali has been very aggressive and has been implementing is the ESG. So, your comments on where Mali stand in terms of the ESG environment and one of your takeaways as well from this event, please.
Thanks, Amit. So on the ESG side, as I briefly touched on earlier, we have done an assessment of our operations and identified the areas which we need to be improved in order for us to meet the global reporting standards, UN goals which have been set for ourselves. We identified around 28 areas where we have seen we need to really focus and bridge the gap to improve our performance on all three elements of ESG. So we have started to integrate those in our operations. We have started to make our teams and our management aware of what needs to be done. We're going to be publishing our first ESG report very soon. Our board has also set up an ESG committee so they can provide the guidance at the board level to the management. We have a dedicated team who is working on all the three pillars of the ESG. So in terms of, this is what I had to say on ESG. Our attendance here, I think it's great to see that all major E&P companies have signed the charter. My takeaway from this meeting is again to be questionable, but I think the gas is going to remain a major part of the energy transition. Everyone has accepted that fact, and I think this is going to be a reality. Pakistan as a country is we're lucky that we have very large deposits of gas. We still have a large potential to discover gas in the country. So we should focus on finding new resources of gas and reduce our dependence on the oil and diesel and the fuel which are more damaging to the environment. And then, with solar and with wind and all the new technologies, the renewables, we have a great potential as a country. So we need to continue investing for future and continue to spend money on renewable energy, rather as wind or as solar, as hydrogen. Also need to look at the carbon capture projects. Balsa mentioned, we are looking at a pilot project, and the cost of carbon capture project is estimated at $35 million. So if you don't get the carbon credits, commercial viability is not going to be one. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much for very good points. So just on responsible reporting is very, very important, and obviously as an LOC, it's a very daunting and challenging task in terms of how you responsibly report the indicators, the numbers, and to your stakeholders, to shareholders. In some of the frontier areas we also operate. So your take on those reporting and some of the steps that you have taken in your capacity, managing director on the ESG implementation, and then what would be your takeaway from this event that you're also attending for the first time this conference?
UCL again this year formulated its greenhouse gas policy along with certain roadmap which is currently being implemented. ESG reporting or sustainability reporting is important for any business concern, and especially from an investor's perspective, especially in order to establish and demonstrate that the entity is being governed and managed and is operated responsibly. So we're at a pretty advanced stage in terms of formulating our ESG policy framework. There is a company-wide training program which is currently underway. We have formed a working group and identified ESG champions who will be working on this because there is a need, and in fact, in order to send the message across to the organization, it is important that everyone is sensitized and fully aware of responsibilities in terms of ESG. As far as my takeaway is concerned, obviously the minister earlier in his keynote address this evening and this afternoon had mentioned about the state of preparedness, which going forward will be a standard feature. I'm quite hopeful. The other is that for the first time, E&P sector, the petroleum sector of Pakistan is formally integrated into the core system. And so there's a lot of sustainability work which is going on at this point in time. And after signing the decarbonization charter, which was essentially an internal matter, we have now made it an international commitment with our partner organizations. So this is something which is going to benefit us as responsible corporate entities, as well as it will actually accelerate and further augment the measures that the government of Pakistan intends taking in this direction.
Okay, sir, thank you very much. Thank you very much, all the panelists. I think there's a lot of commitment out here with people coming in all the way, attending this event and signing the decarbonization accelerator charter. So thank you very much, and I would like to give a round of applause to all our panelists for the excellent session. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sir, can you have a group photo?
There will be a student section.
चलिए ग्रुप फोटो ले लो सर सामने देखिएगा प्लीज़ एक्सचेंज सामने देखिएगा सर